Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Penn State CTSI BERD Seminar Series. My name is Lan Kong. I'm the co-leader of CTSI BERD group at the College of Medicine. So this seminar will be coordinated by myself and my colleague Jay Zhu from Penn State College of Medicine at Department of Public Health Science. So for those of you who join us the first time, I would like to know that this Zoom session is recorded. All attendees are muted. If you have any questions, please submit them using the Q&A feature. All the presentation slides and the recording link will be available to you after the seminar. And we appreciate if you can complete a seminar feedback survey after a Zoom session. So today I'm very pleased to introduce our speaker, Dr. William Calo. Dr. Calo is Assistant Professor of Public Health Science Department in the Division of Health Services and Behavioral Research. Dr. Calo is a health service researcher. Before his joining to Penn State, he received his PhD degree in health policy from the University of Texas School of Public Health at Houston in 2014, and completed his postdoctoral training at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. He also holds a Master of Public Health and a Juris Doctor degree from the University of Puerto Rico. He has served as a policy and legal consultant for several organizations, including the Puerto Rico Department of Health and the Puerto Rico Cancer Center. Dr. Calo's research interests include adaptation, implementation, and evaluation of evidence-based interventions to improve cancer prevention and control among diverse and disadvantaged populations. His current research is focused on the impact of interpersonal systems and policy strategies on HPV vaccine uptake in rural communities and the implementation of locally tailored programs to improve physical activity, nutrition, and community clinical linkages. So today, he will give us an introduction of implementation science and share his experience in applying implementation science methodologies in his studies. So William, welcome, and please take it over from here.
Thank you, Lan. If you allow me to share screen, I'm looking for my slides right now. Thumbs up if you are able to see my screen and hear me well. Perfect. Let me just minimize my small screen here. Again, thank you so much for the invitation. This is William Calo from Public Health Sciences here in College of Medicine. And today, the main purpose of this lecture is to give a brief introduction to implementation science. If you have been exposed to some of the content of this field in the past, probably the first half portion of this lecture will sound very familiar to you. But at the very end, I will be just talking about some resources that are available out there, including our own institution, and also my experience running some of these grants more recently. So let's jump in the presentation. For today, I want to be discussing why implementation science, the rationale, why it's important, defining some key terms and concepts. So please stay with me there. There's some many of them. The expectation is not for you to know all of them, but at least it's important to have a clear distinction about all this terminology. Theories, models and frameworks, or TMF, study design considerations, helpful resources from outside institutions, and at the same time what we're doing here at Penn State College of Medicine, and some of the work that we're just have been working for the last 2 or 3 years, not only here in Hershey, but also our new work with some other partners. So I want to just start talking about, I think you may have heard of the classic statement that it takes 17 years of research to turn into practice. So this was a systematic review conducted by Ballas and Boren in 2000. And basically here you can see the progress of a publication pathway, but this is basically just telling you how much time it takes from one step after you get your original research submitted, and then the submission, acceptance, the publication, how that translates into the bibliographical databases, and then how that is disseminated and blah, blah, and implemented. So you're seeing that this takes so much time, but I think something very important that although this is very helpful to understand how much time we spend doing all this in our normal life, it also have a major flaw here. This is just assuming that the first grant that you submit is accepted and move quickly and smoothly through all these different processes. But at the same time, it's assuming that with only one research or study, we can really change practice, or we can convince people to implement the changes that we are proposing. And we know that is not true. For having some type of intervention being evidence-based, we need a robust body of science, you know? So this requires a lot of studies happening maybe simultaneously, or maybe just building upon each other through many years. So it's not as easy as it shows here. So I think it's really important just again, going back to this classic idea that it takes 17 years to turn only 14% of the research into practice that benefits patient care. But another important aspect that we must note is that just because we're confident about our innovations, about our interventions, that does not mean they will reach individuals who must benefit from it. And the best example to show you that is from this movie poster from Field of Dreams. If you remember this poster, you're old, or at least you're at least 40 years old. I'm sorry. If you don't know Kevin Costner, you're missing a lot of really cool movies, or at least that's what I believe about his movies in the 80s. Anyhow, in this movie, a very important quote. Kevin Costner, I don't remember the name of the person in the actual movie, but he is a farmer in Iowa, and he is just one night just working on the cornfield, and he listened to this mysterious voice just saying, if you build it, they will come. And he decides to build this baseball park in the middle of the cornfield. And in the movie, the ghost of a very important baseball player from the early 1900s just show up and play baseball in the cornfield. So that's the story of the movie. The reality is that for so many of our innovations, if we build them, they may not come. It's not like in the movie that they will show up mysteriously. People may not come and take advantage of our innovation. So we cannot assume a perfect fit between the innovation and what people are looking for. We cannot make that assumption. And I think that is the core or importance of implementation science. How we make sure that if we build that we build that body of science, of evidence, the people who need it the most really take advantage of that. So with that being said, a few key terms here. Implementation science is the study of methods to promote the integration of research findings and evidence into healthcare policy and practice. Implementation science group two types of research: dissemination research and implementation research. Okay, so let's go with dissemination research. This is a scientific study of target distribution of information and intervention materials to specific public health or clinical practice audience. But I'll make a clear distinction here. Through my presentation, I will be using the terms implementation science but implementation research interchangeably. So I want your forgiveness if I do that. But through my presentation, the main topic, the main discussion will be about implementation research, okay? Dissemination research is just the dissemination of that information. Is people aware or have some knowledge about the existing of these interventions or evidence-based practices? Some people would argue that dissemination research should go before implementation research, because people, before making those decisions about what to adopt or adapt, they should have a knowledge about the different menus of options that they have available. The only way for people to do that is for having dissemination research in place. But again, the focus of this presentation is mostly about implementation research. And what is implementation research? Oh, I'm sorry, here. Implementation research is the scientific study of the use of strategies or implementation strategies to adopt and integrate evidence-based interventions into clinical and community settings. What are those evidence-based interventions? These are programs, practice, guidance, or policies that have demonstrated impact in changing health behaviors or improving health outcomes. Implementation strategies are the methods or techniques or approaches used to enhance the adoption, implementation, and sustainability of evidence-based intervention. So in summary, in implementation science, we want to take our interventions, the things that we know work, that's the thing, and we want to use implementation strategies to enhance the adoption of the thing. So it's the how. So the evidence-based intervention is the thing, and the strategy is how we move that intervention into actual uptake and then practice. I hope that is very clear. But again, I'm going to be using the terms science and research interchangeably, but this is not about dissemination research. What is, I have been doing some of these talks before, and people ask me, hey, William, how much implementation research fits within the broad health services research, and found this very interesting paper from David Chambers from 2015. I think it's from Journal of Oncology Practice. And he made this distinction that I really like a lot. It also relates to the key concepts and definition that I've been sharing with you for the last minutes. You can see here in these circles or ovals, implementation science is in red. And within implementation science, you are seeing dissemination research and implementation research that are within this main frame of implementation science. And implementation science is part of health services research. So it's one of the different science or methods that we have to improve the delivery of health services in different settings, hospitals, clinics, systems, or community settings. I like something that they are trying to do here. If you're seeing here, quality improvement. There's a distinction here about quality improvement science and quality improvement. And quality improvement science is more the science of quality improvement within healthcare systems versus quality improvement, which is more about how we can do quality improvement in community settings, something that is not research oriented, but we would like to do that outside the clinic system. That would not belong to implementation science or implementation research. But if you are doing that within the healthcare system, that would be considered part of implementation research. We're going to make that distinction as well, because it's a little bit confusing why quality improvement is break into two different pieces. But this is what is implementation science, with these big buckets here of implementation research and implementation research, how that belongs or pertains or share walls with health services research. So that's what it is. What is not, I just want to show you this other figure here or table. This is the distinctions between implementation research and clinical research. And these are really important to understand. And I will go one by one. So you can see the distinction, and please feel free to use the chat, put your questions and comments there. I'll be looking at those at the very end, but it's really good, at least if you can participate and make some comments that I can just start working on them at the beginning of the presentation. Clinical research aims to evaluate clinical interventions, okay? It's more about the efficacy of that intervention, if it's able to change clinical outcomes. Implementation research our aim is to evaluate the implementation strategy. Is what are we doing to move forward with the evidence-based intervention, but not the intervention per se, okay? A typical intervention in clinical research is a drug, procedure, therapy, versus implementing research, we're more focusing on training, organizational practice change. And I'll show you some of my current examples about that. So you will see that the unit of analysis in clinical research is more about the patient or the community member, if we're doing some work at community settings, versus implemented research, the main focus or the main unit is a cluster. Is the clinic, is the team, the facility, the school, is the community leader, maybe, but it's not the person or the people who are benefiting from the intervention per se. In this implementation research, we're more interested in what we call the implementers versus the patient. Those are the end users of the intervention. So I want to make those distinctions, and just ask the question: can we do research that is able to answer both things, clinical research question and implementation research questions? The answer is yes. Traditionally, for many years, just going back to this issue or this idea that it takes 17 years to translate only 14% of our research into practice. There are new study designs that allow us now to combine both set of questions into single studies and respond to those questions at the same time. And the idea is that by doing those, what we call hybrid design studies, we can answer both questions and maybe speed up the process of that dissemination continuum. But this is the usual way that we do research for many years. We take our what or the thing with evidence-based intervention, we implement it, and we expect to see some health outcomes. And they can be things like satisfaction, or different things, different changes in function, or things like changes in healthcare status, symptoms, or outcomes. And we make this assumption that when we implement the evidence-based intervention, following our protocol, whatever the protocol is, we will see those health outcomes 1 year, 2 years, 5 years down the road. But the problem with this approach, and this is the reason we want to pay more attention to implementation processes, is that this cartoon you're seeing here, there are two professors here. They're talking, looking at this equation on the board, and you're seeing there that there's some kind of numbers or something at the very beginning of the equation, and then there's something that says then a miracle occurs. And one of the faculties asking the other faculty, I think you should be more specific here in step 2. So this is going back again to this idea that we're going from the intervention, from the evidence intervention, we do something that miracle, and then we assume that we will expect some health outcomes. That's exactly what is happening here. You see that the first portion of the equation is evidence-based intervention, and the last portion of the equation is the health outcome. Then the miracle is in the middle, but the reality is that that portion in the middle is what we call the implementation strategy. So if we, it's not a miracle, it is something that we can actually measure with qualitative and quantitative measures, maybe mixed methods, okay? And there in the process that is called the miracle, we can also collect some important implementation outcome data as well. So this is the new way, or maybe the last, I'm saying new way because implementation science is a relatively new or new science, maybe in the last 15, 20 years, new compared to others. And so this is the way, this is the core implementation science, going back to the figure that I showed you before, is understanding the how. It's understanding that there's not such thing like a miracle, okay? There are implementation strategies that we should be paying more attention and understanding those implementation outcomes, because maybe you are seeing that you have an evidence-based intervention that is not producing those health outcomes or service outcomes as other people have been reporting before in prior studies, and just scratch your head saying, oh my gosh, why this is happening? What happened? Maybe it's a different setting, maybe it's a different state or population, or what went wrong? Well, that's so important, why it's critical to really understand the how we implement and the outcomes of that implementation. Those are called implementation outcomes. So moving here, just moving out of the key definition or concepts and just start talking about some other things that I want to share with you. Theories, models, and frameworks. I think this is a really good time for all of you. If you have any question or comment about the prior section that is more about the concepts, something that is probably confusing to you, please use the chat at the very end. I will be just going back and take over those questions. We'll take some water now, sorry. Thank you. Now, let's talk about theories, models, and frameworks, or TMF, in implementation science. There's a paper, Systematic Review, published in 2015. The author is Nielsen, and he summarized at the time over 60 different theories, models, and frameworks used in prior implementation science studies. The reality is that as we speak, there are over 100. So you can imagine that how difficult or challenging is identifying the best one for your research. And I can tell you this is a growing field, evolving field. Not a surprise that every month you read one of the main journals in the field and you're seeing a new proposal or an enhanced theory or model or an extension. So it's really hard to keep up to date with all these emergence of different theories and models. But I'll tell you some tips about how you can identify them and how you can use them. Two things: many of these theories, models, and frameworks are borrowed from other scientific disciplines, but some are uniquely developed for implementation science. More specifically, in the last 5 years, they have been more interested in the field to develop their own theories and models. How can they be used? I think in terms of, I want to just talk right now about your research, about maybe it's a study that you want to implement, or maybe it's a grant proposal that you want to write. So how you can use these theories, models, and frameworks. They can inform your hypothesis. And in fact, I can talk about my research, my current research right now, but your hypothesis should be really connected or linked to that model that you're proposing. Okay, it's really helpful to understand processes and behaviors that you will be studying, identify potential barriers and facilitators, and it will also help you to identify 2 important things: implementation strategies that you plan to test, and the selection of measures and outcomes that you will be evaluating in your study or grant application. If that is not enough to convince you, I want to just show you this paper from Proctor, one of the main authors that you should follow in the field. Proctor published this paper in 2012, almost 10 years ago. And you can see here in this table, the 10 key ingredients for implementation research proposals. And I have reviewed some proposals before, not for NIH, but I can tell you that these are the type of things that we're looking when we score or evaluate these proposals. And if you're seeing here, number 3 is a conceptual model and theoretical justification. And the quick question that you want to answer with that in your proposal, and how that will be reviewed. So it is critical for a really good proposal to include a solid conceptual model or framework. Okay, that is key. And maybe, and I will just tell you some examples of my own research. I have my own preferences. So I have been working with maybe 3 or 4 of these frameworks that I feel comfortable with. Other people have their own theories that they feel there's a better fit for some of the research. I think the important piece here is that you have to justify why you're selecting one versus the other. I'll show you some tips about how you can do that. if you have been paying attention to my last slides, I mentioned that these theories, models, and frameworks is also helpful for selecting implementation strategies and the measures. So if you look at this list from Proctor, you will see something else, that another key ingredients are exactly those things: strategies and measurements. So just want to tell you that by selecting and justifying your proper framework, model, or theory, and having that TMF helping you selecting the strategy and the measures, you are just hitting 3 of the 10 things important for your grant proposal. So I think that is really critical in your grant application. This is a great paper from Paul Nielsen. If you have time during the holiday break and you are just having cookies and warm milk from the fireplace, and you find yourself with 15 minutes to read, maybe 20 more minutes, this is a paper that you can enjoy with your milk and your cookies in the fireplace. And I think it's really helpful because it tells you from all these 5 years ago, 6 years ago, from this list of 60 different TMF, how they can be classified and how you can use them in your own research, depending the question that you want to answer. So let me go quickly through all these, and then I'm going to show you 1 or 2 specific examples for each one of those. The first set, you can see at the bottom of this figure, there are 5 main buckets. So the author classified those TMF into these 5 buckets. The first one is process models. Process models describe and/or guide the process of translating research into practice. And some people say, everything, any model with arrows and boxes or cycles is a process model. And I will say that probably 90% of the time is true. I'll show you one example in a moment. The next 3 are determinant frameworks, classical theories, or implementation theories, and these are helpful to understand and or explain what influence implementation outcomes. And lastly, evaluation frameworks that, of course, will help you to evaluate your implementation. So again, different thing here. One is about the processes. The 3 in the middle is about the implementation outcomes. And the last one is basically those overall evaluation frameworks. Some examples now. Process models, as I mentioned before, the author mentioned that things with arrows or cycles, and you can see here knowledge to action is one of those, or the KTA. This is not only important for implementation research, this is also important for dissemination research. As I mentioned before, dissemination research is about the study of actions to improve the awareness and knowledge of evidence-based interventions. And as you can see here, the core of this model is 2 things. One in the middle is knowledge creation, and outside that middle, those cycles are the knowledge application. So this is more a framework for dissemination research, but you can also use it for implementation research as well. One of my favorites going to determinant frameworks is CIFR. CIFR stands for Consolidated Framework for Implementation Research, and CIFR has 5 domains and 37 constructs. These domains are really important. Just thinking this in picture here, this looks like a setting, or like a, let's imagine this is like a hospital or a clinic. So you're seeing there's an inner setting, there's an outer setting. So there are things that are influencing interventions inside or within the setting and outside the setting. Also, the individuals who are involved, characteristics of the intervention, the processes for making or implementing that intervention in the clinic also influence the implementation outcomes. So this particular framework, one of my favorite, and you'll see why in a few minutes when I describe my own implementation research studies, is widely used in the field. Another one, and I wanna say something that I think from time to time you will see that there are some frameworks, models, or theories that are probably gaining traction in a particular year. I don't know if the gaining traction is the proper word or is more attractive, or you'll see that you can go to a conference, or you can read maybe a whole number of a journal in a given month or so, and you will see that there's some frameworks or theories that are showing a lot. I think this is one. EPIs is one of those that are being used more recently by more and more people. And in the paper from Nielsen, he did something, and it was he classified in a mutually exclusive way all these TMF. So if one of these theories go to one bucket, cannot go to a different one. But this is one that I believe you can be classified in two different places, as a process model, as a determinant model, because you're seeing here the exploration, the preparation, implementation, and sustainment phases. Those are cycles that can help you to understand the process of implementation. But at the same time, within that, you are seeing, similar to CIFER, the inner context, the outer context, the bridging factors, which is basically things that help you to implement things. So here is one that I'm placing here as determinant framework. Actually, this one was not originally classified in the 2015 paper. This is a more recent development, but this is one that I'm seeing more and more people using lately. And maybe it's because it has this dual purpose or dual frame as a process model and determinant framework. So you can use it in multiple ways. So I think it's more flexible for type of work that you can do. One note, I have not used this one. Me personally, I know some of the faculty in culture medicine been putting some proposals using that, and with really good scores and successes at this point. So again, one of the frameworks that I'm seeing used a lot lately. One that is probably being used on the last 30 years, one of the old ones, is you have heard a lot about efficient of innovation from Reuters. This is about the speed of uptake of innovations, the famous bell curve, as you can see here, moving from people who are innovators to laggards. And one of the critiques that this theory have received in the past years is that you can classify some people incorrectly because the innovation, all innovation, they don't become available to all people at the same time. So I'm thinking about COVID-19. I have been having a discussion with some people last week. If you remember, COVID-19 vaccine was approved in November 2020, and it was available in December 2020 for some people, especially so those people in nursing home facilities and the healthcare workers. And then it was like a phased approach. Then in some point in January and February, older adults and people with immunocompromised start receiving the vaccine. And then the general public start receiving mostly the vaccine at some point late March, April. So you would say, oh, I've received the vaccine in April. The vaccine was available in December. Yeah, it is true for some populations. So it's going to be unrealistic just to classify people who got the vaccine in April as early adopters and not as innovators, because they got the vaccine 5 months later than some people, but it was because the vaccine was not available for everybody equally. So one of the things that you also have to consider when you use the definition of innovations is that it's not only about the speed of uptake, but it's also about when the innovation becomes equally available. And I want to say equally because it's not only an issue of availability, it's equally available, which I think is really really important. Just moving forward, implementation theories. These are specific theories that have been developed for the field. institutional readiness for change is one of those. Brian Weiner, one of my former mentors at UNC Chapel Hill, is the author or developer of this one. Before Brian was start developing this type of theories or models, many of the interest in the field was about how we can measure adoption from individuals. But the reality is that adoption of innovations happen most of the time at the facility, clinic, or institution level. So the good thing about ORCA, which is the usual how it stands, our Research for Change Assessment, ORCA, is that start contemplating and evaluating implementation at the clinic level, aggregate measures, not from one provider, but from multiple providers, and understanding the different roles of leaders, how leaders influence frontline workers to adopt or implement, or how champions help some of those leaders to get convinced to get the innovation. So ORCA is one of those that was developed specifically for the field, and probably one of the most usually used. Actually, this one has a really good measurement attached. So if you Google this one, you will have a good set of validated items that have been developed for the last 10 years. And of course, last one, evaluation framework, the always reliable, never getting old, REAIM framework. REAIM stands for Reach, Effectiveness, Adoption, Implementation, and Maintenance. And one of the things that Glasgow did 20 years plus ago was this understanding that it's not only about the effectiveness of the intervention, but also the effectiveness is really depends in reaching the population that you intend to reach, how well adopted or adapted that intervention was, the implementation and maintenance, what happened after that initial adoption. So this is really helpful. One of the things of REAIM is that it's so flexible and user-friendly that it's not only well used among researchers, but also among evaluators and practitioners in healthcare systems and settings. And actually, one thing that I miss is that for most of these TMF, if you Google reaim.org, there's a specific REAIM website with measures and tools available ready to use for people. If you do the same with CIFER, with EPIs, you will find that the developers have been creating their own website, just collecting papers and grant proposals using these and making those available at no cost most of the time for people. So check on those. How do I select the theory model of framework? Really important. Again, are you trying to describe implementation process? And if so, then you have to go with one of the process models. Are you testing implementation strategies? So if so, use a determinant framework. Are you evaluating the implementation process? Then you have to maybe go with REAIM. So depending what you want to answer with your research question pertaining to the implementation portion, you have to select one or the other. Importantly, my second bullet, sometimes you will need to use a combination of models for your own research. I also wanna mention here that in terms of NIH or PCORI applications, you're seeing that CIFER, Proctor's Implementation Outcome Framework, and REAIM are commonly used in grant applications. I have someone raising the hand. Oh, Gail, do you have a question, Gail? Do you want to ask now? Or do you want to wait to the end? I'll continue. Feel free to just jump in if you want. Again, I mentioned that there's multiple websites. This one is really helpful. Please visit that, disseminationimplementation.org. It has like a collection of, or a catalog of these TMF. And if you answer a couple of questions, based on the research that you want to answer, the website will recommend you one or more theory frameworks or models that you can use. So this is very helpful. I don't want to say it is 100% accurate all the time. Again, it all depends what you want to do. And I think also at what stage you are in your implementation science journey, you want to say that, because some of these models are very complex. So maybe it's better if you want to start doing some work, maybe use some of the kind of the re-aim, get familiar with the process, the measures, the strategies, and then move to a more complex TMF. I have 20 more minutes, so let me jump up the speed here a little bit. Study design consideration. What is the best study design to use implementation research? I think, again, sorry, I don't have a magic bullet here. It all depends on your research question. There's so many study designs used implementation research, observational, experimental, post-experimental. I'm going to be just talking about experimental designs right now, but just mention one really important thing. There's a growing interest in the field right now in using qualitative methods and case study designs. So if you're in qualitative field or mixed methods field, there's some recently developed toolkits, actually from NIH or NCI, about how you can apply qualitative methods, implementation science, and how you can just develop case studies to answer implementation science questions. So not everything has to be very experimental, but my focus is on some experimental designs, but I just want to keep you aware of those. Most of the designs are being pulled from other disciplines that you will see, and a few of those, like hybrid designs, are unique to implementation research. Basically the same, what I just mentioned, spend some time in experimental study designs, and if you go to NIH Reporter, you do your search, implementation science, implementation research, experimental designs, you will see that the last 3 clusters RCT, pragmatic RCTs, and stepwise clusters RCT are the preferred, or no one say they prefer, but you will see that they get a lot of hits. So many of the funded research in the field use any of those last three ones. Quickly, pragmatic RCTs. Just want to mention a few things. Exploratory trials measure efficacy or the benefit of a treatment produced under ideal conditions versus a pragmatic trial, more focused on effectiveness, the benefit the treatment produces in routine clinical practice. So this is very useful in implementation science because we have this buzzword that we use a lot. Let's try to do things in real world places or settings. So this is what this routine clinical practice means, you know. Let's try to do this not under these very experimental conditions, but something more flexible to mimic the real world experience. As you know, experimental trials maximize internal validity, while pragmatic trials give priority to external validity, but at the same time, really important, maintaining the rigor of traditional randomized controlled trials. There's one very useful model that you can use, and it's called PRACIS, Pragmatic Explanatory Continuing Indicator Summary, to help people like you developing trials to really understand in what stage are you in terms of this is very explanatory or pragmatic. The original version was published in 2009. There's a more recent version, and I'll show you now. Actually, PRACIS is one of the things that you can go online. Again, I think it's pracis.org. I think it's a website. You know, just Google that. And if you create an account, the account is free. You can just answer some questions about these 9 domains, information about the study that you are conducting or you're proposing, and the PRACIS website will develop this diagram for you. So the more at the center, the more explanatory, the more at the outside of this circle is more pragmatic. When I mention one thing, pragmatic does not mean that your intervention is better than a traditional RCT. Don't make that mistake. Don't say that your intervention is better than a usual RCT if it's more the pragmatic way. What you're trying to accomplish here is make sure that your intervention is a better fit for routine clinical practice. But there's no quality indicator that one intervention is better versus another, depending on the score. It's just a reflection of how well your intervention will fit into routine clinical practice. That's it. Don't make the mistake to make some quality assessment about that. But anyway, very useful. So please take a look and use the tool. It's to my best knowledge is free online. Also, stepwise cluster randomized controlled trials. I know LAN is here. I have been trying to get some grants funded with LAN. None of mine have been funded using this type of design. But basically, one of the beauties of this design is that every cluster will receive the intervention at some point, and this is again really important and practical and ethical. I think ethical because one of the things, like, again, do we want to do this in real world settings or more practical way? So if we want to do that, everybody should have the same opportunity to receive the intervention. So you're seeing here times period in times period number 1, what I'm just showing here. There are 5 clusters. And in period number 1, there's no one of these clusters. Just let's think that in each cluster, there are 5 primary care clinics assigned, 25 total. So no clinic is getting the intervention in time period 1. But in time period 2, the first 5 clinics, cluster 1, is receiving the intervention, and so until the end of the period or period 6, that all clusters are receiving the same intervention. That's one of the important things: the same intervention as the prior clusters. This is really used in the field. I have been unlucky getting my grants with this type of approach. One thing that I want to mention is effectiveness is these hybrid designs. This is what I want to show you that it has been really useful in the field. Just try to answer those effectiveness and implementation questions at once. There are 3 types of studies. I'm going to skip this. I only have 15 more minutes. But basically, if you see at one extreme, the left side of the screen, you're seeing clinical effectiveness research. And at the right side of the screen, you're seeing implementation research. So in hybrid type 1, you are more interested in testing the clinical intervention, changes in the clinical outcomes. That's what you're more interested. At the other side, you have hybrid number 3. You're more interested in understanding the implementation outcome evaluation, but there in the middle, you have an equal emphasis and equal focus on both things: the clinical effectiveness and implementation effectiveness of your intervention. Quickly, in terms of useful resources out there, if you go to this website from NCI, there's sample grant applications that you can access for free. Just hit the bottom and you will have the full proposal submitted and funded by NCI. I just showing 4 of these here, but I think at this point, like, there may be like 20 of those, ranging from R21s, R1s, and adult 3. So please take a look on this one. Maybe one of your focus areas is just right here, and you would like to see what model other people have been using before and how they have been just showing that in the application. So please take a look on this one. There's so many funded opportunities out there. As a note, NIH and NCI, they have their standing PARs 3 times a year. So, you can submit R1s, R21s, R3s, focus in implementation science. PCORI is the one at the bottom. PCORI also have their own grant mechanism for implementation studies that you can take advantage of. I'm just showing these 2 to you because I have an R01 funded through NIH, which is the first screenshot there. And I'm working with Jen Krasnowski and LAN as well in PCORI funded grant. So I'm aware of these too, but I know ACS, Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, HRQ, they also have calls for proposals focusing on implementation science. National international conferences, the one that is happening today, from today until Friday, is the annual conference on the science of dissemination and implementation in health. This is happening every year in the month of December. Also, check and pay attention to the Society of Implementation and Research. They have their biannual meeting, and the next one will be in 2022. So please check it out. I think this one will be in California. There's other conferences happening in Europe and Australia as well from their main associations or societies. Many training opportunities, from 1-week courses to maybe 1 year or 2-year mentor training, like the one here in Washington University. This one is focused on cancer prevention. I know there's some other focus on mental health, so please check it out. I can send you more information if you wanna chat about this later. There's so many journals. Actually, I would have said US based. There are 4 of them: Implementation Science Communication, Translational Behavioral Medicine, and the new one is Implementation, Research, and Practice. So I have been just seeing here, I've been able to publish in 3 of those. So please check it out. There's specific places for your own implementation science work to be published. So take advantage of those journals. And I think I only have 8 minutes. So let me just jump here. All this is my own RCT. Is a type 2 design. Sorry that I cannot show you this, but something that I want to show you here are, I want to just have like maybe five minutes for Q&As. This is my 2 aims. Why is it a type 2 design? My aim 1, have a primary outcome: changes in HPV vaccination. And this is my hypothesis. Just copy and paste from my grant so you can see how I write those. My aim 2 also has a primary outcome. Both of them are equally important. So this is my effectiveness outcome, and this one is my implementation outcome. Some people would say that my design was more like a type 3, because the design and the emphasis on implementation, someone can perceive that it's higher on my application, but the way I designed that was as a type 2. So you can see here how I laid out my aim, my outcome, and my hypothesis for the implementation piece of my type 2 design. I also mentioned one thing, and I can share all this slide with you so you can take a look at that one. This is my conceptual model. And FYI, this looks different from what I showed you before. Before I show you a collection of frameworks and models, my proposal conceptual model combine 2 TMF. So I use CIFER, as you can see here, outer context, inner context, intervention characteristics, and implementation processes. And what you're seeing here in the middle, all these buckets here, this is Proctor Implementation Outcome Framework. So I combine both, I integrate both, and I create my very own conceptual model. I needed to do that for my proposal because the question and the design that I want to propose needed a more complex conceptual model. Okay, and I think that's something that I want to say, that depending where you are in your stage, you can propose something that is more complex or more simple but elegant. I don't have a magic solution for that, but we can chat about that, how I can help you selecting your model. And talking about how I can help you, or how we can help you, this is something that some of you are very aware of what we're trying to do here in College of Medicine. This is our website, and my team, we have staff and doctoral student working with me on this new adventure. So for the thing that we're trying to do in our ISC, is to conduct our own studies to advance the field of implementation science, also provide consultation to researchers and faculty on the methods, measures, and designs that you can use. So please send an email to us. You have seen Chelsea Keller's email there. Send an email to her if you would like to sit down with us to see how we can help you. The third thing is that we're also developing opportunities for education and training. Thank you, Lan, for inviting us to this seminar. This is one of the things that we're trying to do. And actually, starting next year, we'll try to start our implementation science seminar series. We will focus on implementation education for students, postdoc, and junior faculty. And lastly, we're creating awareness and capacity for implementation science here in College of Medicine. So please send an email to Chelsea Keller. Her email is here if you would like to learn more about what we're trying to do here. Visit our website as well, so you can see the resources that we have there. And we're happy to share some of our stuff with you, so please contact us. And with that being said, thank you so much. So now I will just stop here, and we have like 5 more minutes for questions. Is there any question or comment that some of you would like to ask in the last 5 minutes?
If somebody want to raise your hand, I can.
Okay.
Yeah, I can actually go there to allow you to talk if you want to ask questions.
I have a comment here from Casey. Thank you, Casey. Well, someone have a question or something. We want to mention that we have our R1 funded. We're also working with UNC Chapel Hill. They have a PO1, it's a large center grant. Our team got the SOP award for providing the implementation science consultation. So we're supporting their 4 R1 size projects. With that, we're also working with Katie Schmitz and Jim Krasnowski on their different projects as well, providing implementation science consultation, measurement, and very different topics. Katie Schmitz is in exercise oncology, and Jim Krasnowski is her work with nursing homes and COVID-19 infectious control. So because my work focus on HPV vaccination, don't think that I'm restricted to focus on that topic. All these methods and frameworks and measurements can really be applied to other fields. And we have been very successful doing that with some of our investigators here. So if you want to chat more about how we can help you, just let us know. Let me take a look on the questions here. Thank you, Sophia. Yeah, Precis is a really nice tool. I have not been used that before, but I think it's really helpful if you want to take your research outside the clinical setting and you want to put it in a more, maybe let's say it's not the hospital, but you want to work with primary care clinics, or you want to just go to FQACs. You can just show using Precis tool how you are making your intervention more accessible or more flexible to routine care settings. And you have to justify that. They have low resources in terms of staff, size, money. So Precis will help you to make the story and the justification why your intervention is ready to be deployed outside the place it was originally tested. Okay, that's how Precis can help you. We have only 1 more minute, so I just want to say thank you so much. Feel free to send me an email or email Chelsea Keller if you would like to chat more about our work, or how we can just sit down with you and chat about our research and how we can help you. So Lan, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, William. It's a wonderful talk. It's very informative. I believe our audience or the investigator at College of Medicine would love to collaborate or consult with you when they try to use implementation science in their studies. So this is our last presentation from BERD seminar series this semester. I would like to thank everyone for joining us. Please stay tuned for the upcoming spring seminar series. The registration information will be sent out in early January. We look forward to you in the next semester. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, William.
Thank you.